Hello, CJ and Alma Angeles. Welcome to Eagle News International.
Hello, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining the broadcast here on.
The temporary reduction in carbon emissions caused by global COVID-19 lockdowns did not slow the relentless advance of climate change. A multi-agency climate report published today warned that greenhouse gas concentrations are at record levels and the planet is on path towards dangerous overheating.
In response to the criticism Senator Richard Gordon said the Senate should be allowed to continue this investigation as it has so far uncovered fraud.
The first civil lawsuit began in a court in Vienna over a notorious outbreak of coronavirus at a popular ski resort last year, where thousands of people from 45 countries claimed to have become infected.
And SpaceX dissolves civilian and Air Force in orbit, conducting scientific research and talking at a cancer hospital after blasting off on their pioneering mission from Cape Canaveral.
First, in climate news, the temporary reduction in carbon emissions caused by global COVID-19 lockdowns didn't slow the relentless advance of climate change. A multi-agency climate report published today warned that greenhouse gas concentrations are at record levels and the planet is on path towards dangerous overheating. The report also said there's an increasing likelihood that temperatures will temporarily breach the threshold of 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial era in the next 5 years. Let's listen in.
Last year, we estimated that there was 5.6% drop in emissions. Since the lifetime of carbon dioxide is so long, this 1 year's anomaly in emissions doesn't change the big picture. We saw some improvements in air quality, these short-lived gases which are affecting air quality. We saw positive evolution there, but now we have returned more or less back to the 2019 emission levels. We had this temperature anomaly in Western Canada and United States, where we were up to 15 degrees warmer temperatures than normally, and that led to record-breaking forest fires and major health problems, especially among elderly people. And also this flooding event in Western Germany, that was very unusual and led also to almost 200 casualties. And because of climate change, these kind of events that used to happen every 100 years, they may happen nowadays every 20 years and in the future even more often. So the risk of these kind of events is growing because of climate change. We don't know what's going to happen to the Antarctic glacier, where we have the biggest mass of ice worldwide. And in the worst case, we could see up to 2 meters sea level rise by the end of this century, if the melting of the Antarctic glacier happens in a speedier manner. That we are not yet on track towards the Paris 1.5 to 2 degrees limits, although positive things have started to happen. And the political interest to mitigate climate change is clearly growing, but to be successful in this effort, we have to start acting now. We cannot wait for decades to act. We have to start acting already during this decade. Now we are heading towards 2 to 3 degrees warming instead of 1.5 to 2 degrees, and it has been shown clearly that it would be beneficial for the welfare of us human beings and welfare of the biosphere and the planet to reach even the low limit of Paris Agreement 1.5 degrees.
In other news, the Japan Meteorological Agency warned that a typhoon that made landfall in the western part of the country Friday afternoon could bring heavy rain and cause landslides and flooding. The agency previously forecast that the typhoon would turn into an extratropical cyclone before approaching the southwestern main island of Kyushu. Western Japan is now expected to be hit by strong winds on Friday, with torrential rainfall forecast for Thursday night through Friday. Maximum rainfall in the 24 hours through noon on Saturday will reach 300 millimeters in Shikoku and 250 millimeters in the Tokai region, according to or in central Japan.
Meanwhile, experts were keeping a close watch on a volcano in Spain's Canary Islands, which last erupted 50 years ago after observing an upsurge in seismic activity and magma displacements. Now, the earthquake swarm under the La Cumbre Vieja on La Palma Island began on Saturday, and since then there have been almost 1,000 tremors, the strongest with a magnitude of 3.4. The Volcanology Institute said. An earthquake swarm is a sequence of seismic events occurring in one place within a relatively short period of time. Now, it said an intensification of the type of seismic activity in the coming days cannot be ruled out. The Spanish government's office in the Atlantic archipelago said the situation could change quickly in the short term, but stressed there was no clear evidence that suggested an eruption was imminent. Cumbre Vieja is an active, although dormant, volcanic ridge in the south of La Palma that has erupted twice in the 20th century, first in 1949 and then in 1971.
Meanwhile, 3 people were killed and dozens injured when a shallow earthquake struck southwestern China yesterday, triggering the second highest level of emergency response by rescuers in Sichuan province. The quake struck Luqian County before dawn on Thursday, around 120 kilometers southwest of the sprawling megacity of Chongqing, which, along with its surrounding area, is home to around 30 million people. Rescue workers rushed to lift people from beneath rubble, moving them out of damaged buildings on first footage from the Sichuan Fire Brigade showed. Over 1,000 houses in Luqian, 3,000 others were damaged, according to authorities.
In other news, President Duterte has instructed Solicitor General Jose Calida to pen a letter addressed to the Commission on Audit Chair Michael Aguinaldo, requesting the finances of the Philippine Red Cross to be audited. The PRC is headed by Senator Richard Gordon, chair of the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee, which is probing the government's use of COVID-19 pandemic funds. Take a look.
Ang chairman is a despot. He does not allow anybody to answer, and he cuts the testimony of even the COA. Nakinig man ako, ano klaseng tao ito? And he talks and talks and talks. He cannot help but open his mouth. He is a pathological storyteller. Si Gordon. Hinintay ko lang, the next step would be really be the letter to be delivered to the COA by Solicitor General Calida regarding my request to audit the Red Cross.
Ang masasabi ko lang po is wala po sa COA report ng PSDBM ang statement na may overpricing po. There's no statement to that. The observations related more to inventory management than overpricing. So hindi po tama na sabihin ang COA ang nagsabi na may overprice kasi wala pong sinabi yon doon sa report. Anyway, nandito po kami to be able to provide clarification to any of the questions the committee members may ask. Magandang umaga po.
Tama na. Ayun. Yun si COA. That was the chairman of the Commission on Audit, sinabi niya, ano po bang gusto ninyo? Senators, I'm asking you. He said, I do not want a fight with you. But what else do you want? Yung parmalin, bahala kayo.
The president said he would allow Health Secretary Francisco Duque III to keep attending the Senate probes, though, to just tell the plain truth. He earlier asked his cabinet officials to get his consent before showing up at Senate inquiries.
Staying here in the country, in a response to the criticisms against him by President Duterte, Senator Richard Gordon said the Senate should be allowed to continue with its investigation as it has so far uncovered fraud, waste, and abuse. Take a look.
Wala pa naman po kami hinuhusga. Tila baga yung lumalabas, natataranta ang Pangulo. Bakit kailangan kayo ang magtanggol, Mr. President? Ito po ay napapansin ko lamang sapagkat nakakapagtaka mga kababayan. Magmula nung lumabas po ito sa COA, binigwasan na po ng Pangulo ang COA. Maanghang na salita ang pinaulan sa COA. Ang sabi, huwag makinig sa COA. Mind you, the Constitution says that COA is practically the guardian, the balancer, para mababalance ang mga katiwalian, para mauulat sa tao ang mga kakulangan, ang mga discrepancy na nangyayari sa gobyerno. Natatakot sila, Mr. President, sa ginagawa ko. Pero hindi nila ako pinipigilan, Mr. President. They know. Ang tatay ko na pinaslang, ang nanay ko, na kahit sila ay mga high school graduate, nakapagsilbi sa bayan. Na ako, may bahay ko nakapagsilbi. Hindi sabay-sabay, pero nakapagsilbi. Ng tapat. Hindi ko na sasabihin ang mga nagawa namin, maglayabang pa tayo, hindi na po tayo aabot doon. So, mga kababayan, para pag-usapan natin, Mr. Pangulo, how does this pandemic really affect the lives of our people? Yan ang dapat natin pag-usapan sa umpisang-umpisa. Yan ang sinabi ng COA. Pinagtatanggol nila ang pera ng kabambayan. Huwag mong tigilan. And thank you, Senate President Soto, for telling the President, ginagawa lang ni Senator Gordon yung kanyang tungkulin bilang chairman ng Blue Ribbon Committee. Mr. President, tigilan na natin to, Mr. President. Tigilan na natin to. Huwag niyo nang pagtanggol yan. Kayaan nyo matapos ito. Payag na ako, sabihin nyo, walang overpricing. Sa pananaw nyo, walang overpricing. I will say na lang, simple lang. May fraud, may waste, and abuse.
Now, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the United States stands solidly behind Australia, which has faced growing pressure from China. Australian Foreign Minister Marise Payne says that such pressure requires us to respond and to increase resilience, but adds that talks with China are not off the table.
And Beijing has seen over the past months that Australia will not back down, and that threats of economic retaliation and pressure simply will not work. I also want to reiterate what I've said before. The United States will not leave Australia alone on the field, or better yet, on the pitch, in the face of these pressure tactics.
Today, we also discussed strategic competition. We discussed the competition of China at a number of levels that requires us to respond and to increase resilience. This does not mean that there are not constructive areas for engagement with China. Australia continues to seek dialogue with China without preconditions.
forging a new three-way alliance with Britain and Australia to the anger of the French, U.S. President Joe Biden has again made brutally clear his top international priority, overriding all else, will be facing China. Under the alliance, christened with the acronym AUKUS, Australia will be the only country other than Britain to have access to U.S. technology to build nuclear-powered submarines, which could deploy in contested waters where Beijing is assertively exerting its claims. The announcement infuriated China, but also France, which lost a contract to build conventional submarines for Australia that was worth 50 billion Australian dollars at the time of signing.
Discussed the competition of China at a number.
Meanwhile, a British court on Friday said Prince Andrew's legal team had been given 7 days to challenge a decision to notify him about a U.S. civil case accusing him of sexual misconduct. The Duke of York's accuser, Virginia Giuffre, on Wednesday successfully applied to the High Court of England and Wales for it to formally contact him about the case in New York. Giuffre claims that Queen Elizabeth II's second son sexually assaulted her more than 20 years ago when she was 17 and a minor under U.S. state law. But lawyers for the Duke, who denies the claims, have claimed legal papers in the case in which she is suing for damages were not properly served. The High Court said lawyers for the 60-year-old Duke had indicated that they may seek to challenge the validity of its ruling.
Now, the campaign to become Japan's next prime minister kicked off today with 4 candidates vying for leadership of the ruling party in an unusually close race. Take a look.
気候変動、いや、もはや気候危機と言われる時代になりました。再生可能エネルギーを最優先に最大限に入れていかなければなりません。そのための必要な投資を政府が率先して行っていきたいと思っています。
母親でもあります。障害を持つ家族がいて、さらに立法府の人間としてここにいる仲間たちと発達障害者支援法や政治分野における男女共同参画法など多様な取り組みを進めてきたところです。そんな多様性という視点を武器に、これからの総裁選をしっかりと戦い抜いていきたいと思います。
The race follows Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga's shock announcement that he would not run for the head of the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, or LDP. Whoever the party picks in a September 29 vote will contest a general election that has to be held by late November. As the LDP is expected to retain power, its leader is likely to be the person leading the world's third largest economy in coming years, and will face challenges from dealing with China to tackling climate change.
In other news, Myanmar's junta will put ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi on trial for corruption, according to her lawyer today, adding to a raft of ongoing cases that could see her jailed for decades. The 76-year-old Nobel laureate is currently on trial for flouting coronavirus restrictions during polls the NLD won in a landslide last year, illegally importing walkie-talkies and sedition. She will face a new trial on 4 charges of corruption beginning on October 1 in the capital Naypyidaw, according to her lawyer, Mang Zhao. Now, each corruption charge carries a maximum sentence of 15 years. The junta has also charged her for accepting illegal payments of gold and violating a colonial-era secrecy law, although these are yet to come to court. Her NLD government was deposed by the military for alleged voter fraud during the 2020 polls, in which it trounced a political party aligned with the generals.
Tensions are mounting 4 days ahead of Canada's legislative elections as Liberal Prime Minister Justin Trudeau calls on citizens to vote strategically to block a Conservative surge in which he faces a potential defeat at the hands of rookie Tory leader Erin O'Toole. Take a look.
We have a choice to make as a country, and it's a really simple one. but it's a really important one. Do we keep moving forward, or do we go backward with the Conservatives?
He highlighted stark policy differences between his party and rival parties on mandatory vaccinations, childcare, and the environment, and emphasized the need for a new mandate to steer Canada's pandemic exit. But he has been unable to rekindle the spark of his 2015 campaign, which had not been seen in Canadian politics since the Trudeau mania that hailed his father's entry into politics a half-century earlier. The vote was announced for September 20 after the dissolution of Parliament by Governor General Mary Simon, representative of Canada's head of state, Queen Elizabeth. The campaign was set to last 36 days, the minimum length by law. Voters will be called upon to elect 338 members of Parliament to the House of the Commons, whose term in office is normally 4 years. A constitutional monarchy, Canada is also a parliamentary democracy in which the chief executive is the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is the leader of the party that wins the most seats in the lower chamber.
Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson appointed a new-look cabinet to revamp his Brexiteer government after controversies over COVID, Afghanistan, and taxes. Here's Ashley Espiritu joining us live from our UK bureau. Ashley.
Hello, Alma. Thank you. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Wednesday appointed a new-look cabinet to revamp his Brexiteer government after controversies over COVID, Afghanistan, and taxes, demoting his under-fire Foreign Secretary. Dominic Raab was moved to the lesser role of Justice Secretary, but will retain the title of Deputy Prime Minister, Downing Street confirmed. The former lawyer, who deputised for Johnson when he was in intensive care with COVID-19 in April last year, has faced sustained criticism for his handling of the Afghan crisis. He was replaced by International Trade Secretary Liz Truss, who has brokered a series of deals since Britain's full exit from the European Union in January. She is only the second female foreign secretary in British history and one of 6 women in Johnson's 23-strong team, up from 5 before, but still down on his recent predecessor's cabinets. The Prime Minister tweeted, "The cabinet I have appointed today will work tirelessly to unite and level up the whole country. We will build back better from the pandemic and deliver on your priorities. Now let's get on with the job." Among the other leading officers of state, Finance Minister Rishi Sunak, who has overseen big spending economic support during the pandemic, and hardline Interior Minister Priti Patel both retained their roles. Now that Britain has formally left the EU after a years-long process, the Conservative government has been battling to tame one of the world's highest per capita death tolls from the pandemic. Johnson enjoyed a vaccine bounce after Britain led the Western world in a mass immunisation programme, but the Conservatives' lead over the main opposition Labour Party has eroded in recent opinion polls. Last week, Johnson broke an election promise not to raise taxes as he announced a new levy to fund the state-run National Health Service, NHS, and elderly care. Angering some Conservative right-wingers, Johnson this week outlined a plan to restore pandemic restrictions if needed to avert a fresh crisis for the NHS heading into what could be a difficult winter. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Ashley. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alma. I'm Ashley Espiritu reporting from London, United Kingdom, and we live in interesting times.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. CJ and I will be back right after this break.
This portion is brought to you by North Luzon Express Terminal.
Turuan din natin ang mga bata ng tamang paghugas ng mga kamay. Basain ang kamay ng tubig at lagyan ng sabon. Kuskusin ang iyong mga palad. Gayon din ang pagitan ng mga daliri. Pati na ang likod ng mga palad at daliri. Ganon din ang iyong hinlalaki, kasama ang mga dulo ng iyong mga daliri. Pagkatapos ay iyong palapulsuhan. Gawin ito ng kahit 20 segundo. Pagkatapos ay banlawan ng tubig at patuyuin.
Welcome back to the news. A prominent U.S. lawyer who allegedly attempted to stage his own murder was charged on Thursday with insurance fraud and lying to the police in the latest twist in a bizarre crime saga. Alex Murdo, 53 years old, his wife and son were murdered in June of this year, is accused of paying a man to shoot him so his surviving son could collect on a $10 million insurance policy. Murdo survived the September 4 shooting on the side of a country road in South Carolina and surrendered on Thursday to face charges of insurance fraud and filing a false police report. Hampton County Judge Tonya Alexander granted Murdo's release on a personal recognizance bond of $20,000 to allow him to get treatment at a rehabilitation facility for what his lawyer said was a tremendous opioid addiction. Murdo's wife, Maggie, 52 years old, and their son, Paul, a 22-year-old college student, were shot dead on June 7th at the family's sprawling hunting lodge in Islandton in southwestern South Carolina. No arrests have been made in connection with their deaths. One line of speculation surrounding the murders is related to the fact that Paul Murdo, at the time of his death, was awaiting trial on charges stemming from a February 2019 boat crash that left a 19-year-old woman dead. Murdo's staged murder attempt came a day after he was forced out of his law firm for allegedly embezzling millions of dollars. Police are investigating Murdo in that case for misappropriating funds.
Meanwhile, the first civil lawsuit began in a court in Vienna on Friday over a notorious outbreak of coronavirus at a popular ski resort last year, where thousands of people from 45 countries claim to have become infected. The case is the first of 15 lawsuits filed by plaintiffs from Austria and Germany, accusing the authorities of not responding quickly enough to COVID-19 outbreaks in Ischl and other resorts in the province of Tyrol. Lawyer Alexander Clauser pointed to a report last October by an independent commission of experts which found that local officials had reacted too late and made serious miscalculations when alerted by Iceland on March 5 that several of its nationals had tested positive on returning home. Clauser also accused the local authorities of doing too little, too late, when a restaurant worker tested positive for the virus. When the valley was finally placed in quarantine, an orderly evacuation was thwarted by the chaotic manner in which it was announced and organized, according to Clauser, pointing the finger at Chancellor Sebastian Kurz as well. Shop's Window said the retired journalist and avid skier caught the virus during the panic evacuation by bus crammed with other tourists who were sneezing and coughing. The Shop family is now suing the Republic of Austria for 100,000 euros over his death.
In other news, British media said London Underground operators have reported a surge in escalator accidents as wary passengers shun the handrail for fear of catching COVID-19. Now, the Daily Telegraph and the Evening Standard said there were 12 serious injuries on the tube network between April and June, and 23 on buses, more than any quarter throughout 2020-2021. An end to lockdown restrictions and a return to pubs and socializing has increased the number of drunken revelers on nights out, worsening the situation. Passenger numbers on London's underground trains and buses have returned to near pre-pandemic levels since stay-at-home rules were lifted in England in July.
Meanwhile, Idaho, the U.S. state with the lowest COVID vaccination rate in the country, announced it was rationing medical care and would turn patients away from ventilators if they aren't likely to recover. The Northwestern State's Health Department said it had enacted the measure because of the massive increase of COVID-19 patients requiring hospitalization, which had exhausted existing resources. The situation is dire, according to Health Department Director Dave Jepson in a statement. He further said, "We don't have enough resources to adequately treat the patients in our hospitals, whether you are there for COVID-19 or a heart attack or because of a car accident," he added, calling on more Idaho residents to get vaccinated. The department statement explained that under the rationing guidelines, patients admitted to hospital may find beds unavailable or be treated in repurposed settings like conference rooms.
Now, in other news, Cambodia today began inoculating children as young as 6 against coronavirus, even though the World Health Organization has yet to approve a vaccine for the under 12s. The Southeast Asian country has won praise for its swift vaccination program, which has seen more than 98% of the adult population receive at least one dose, according to the health ministry. The latest phase of the drive began with the grandchildren of Prime Minister Hun Sen and other officials receiving a Sinovac shot in front of reporters in Phnom Penh. Cambodia plans to give children aged 6 to 12 2 shots of the Chinese-made vaccine with a third booster dose later. Sinovac has been approved for adult use in more than 50 countries, but China has cleared it for use in children. But health experts are not yet sure about the advisability of vaccinating younger children. The World Health Organization has urged countries to hold off jabbing those under 12.
The British Embassy in Manila today announced the temporary suspension of visitor visa issuance for applicants from the Philippines. Now, the UK or United Kingdom has paused the issuance of visitor visas for applicants in red list countries, including the Philippines. All other visa categories will continue to be processed. For example, applications for work, study, and settlement, according to its advisory. The Philippines and 61 other countries and territories are included in the UK government's Red List travel advisory. Under Red List rules, only British, Irish nationals or persons with residence rights in the UK will be allowed to enter the country. Meanwhile, the United States Embassy in Manila also canceled non-immigrant B1, B2, or business tourist visa interview appointments scheduled through October 29 in response to the continued significant worldwide challenges related to the COVID pandemic.
In other pandemic news, the National Task Force, or NTF, against COVID-19, along with Metro Manila mayors, have started their preparations for the expansion of the COVID-19 vaccination program to the younger population, that according to Vaccine Czar Secretary Cardito Galvez Jr. today. Galvez said the so-called vaccination tempo for the National Capital Region is nearing its saturation point, allowing the expansion of vaccine rollout to other sectors. Based on the NTF data sent to the media Friday night, about 64.21% of NCR's target eligible population for vaccination are now fully vaccinated, while 84.09% have received their first doses. Galvez said some local government units in Metro Manila have opened registration for the younger age bracket. Galvez said once a sufficient supply of vaccines is delivered and with a recommendation of the health experts, the government will start pediatric vaccination.
Staying in the country, the Department of Health today reported 10,028 new recoveries from COVID-19, bringing the total number to 2,100,039 or 90.3% of all known infections in the country since the start of the pandemic last year. Now, in its daily COVID bulletin, the DOH also reported 20,336 new cases, slightly down from Thursday's 21,161 new infections. To date, there are 188,108 active cases in the country, comprising 8.1% of a total of 2,324,275 infections since the start of the pandemic. Of these active cases, the majority at 87.6% have mild symptoms, followed by the asymptomatic at 8.1%, those with moderate symptoms at 2.49%, and those with severe symptoms at 1.3%, and those in critical condition at 0.6%.
U.S. medical experts will meet to debate and vote on the controversial question of giving out booster doses of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine to the general population. Take a look. Now, President Joe Biden's administration announced in August a plan to roll out third shots to everyone, not just the immune-compromised already able to receive them starting from September 20th. But experts have since expressed reservations about whether they are required amid concerns over global inequity, the greater need to vaccinate the unvaccinated, and possible increased risk of side effects. Pfizer will also present data showing boosters increased antibody levels against the Delta variant, as well as research from Israel, which ran a booster campaign for the general population to help make its case. We'll be back with more stories. Please don't go away.
This portion is brought to you by Innovexcel Printing Services, excellence in innovation. For inquiries, you may call Mark D. Mayuga at 0917-900-6396.
Hey there, Arnie Aquino here at Hatley Castle, one of the filming locations for the X-Men series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net 25.
Welcome back. Fitch Ratings expects world gross domestic product or GDP will grow by 6% in 2021, according to its Global Economic Outlook report for September. The new figure is down from the global rating agency's 6.3% world GDP growth forecast
gives us an opportunity to start working
made in June.
And I think the whole island, especially the tourism sector.
Now, supply constraints are limiting the pace of recovery, according to the agency in a statement, adding a greater share of demand growth is being reflected in price increases, and U.S. inflation forecasts have been revised up again. The agency lowered the U.S. GDP forecast for this year to 6.2% from 6.8%. Made in June. China's 2021 growth expectation was also lowered to 8.1% from 8.4%, citing property slowdown weighing on domestic demand. Growth estimate for Eurozone this year, on the other hand, was revised up to 5.2% from 5%.
In other business news, businesses on the Malaysian holiday island of Langkawi welcomed the opening of the Asian hotspot as the destination was reopened to tourism. Restrictions on local travel had been in place for months and the international border being worked as Malaysia battles its work.
and totally overjoyed. It gives us an opportunity to start working again. And I think the whole island, especially the tourism sector, they are all very happy. So when we were in shutdowns all this time, the local community of Langkawi overall, the businesses, the people, everyone was badly affected, very badly affected.
We're absolutely hopeful, and our ladies and gentlemen are so ready and so excited. In fact, today, many of them wearing traditional outfits because it's Malaysia Day on top of it. And what is not a better day to start this travel bubble? It offers a main chance of recovery, yes, and hopefully the pilot project of the travel bubble is able to bring more business into Malaysia as a country, as well as soon hopefully open other destinations and the much looked forward to international market.
Langkawi welcomed around 3.9 million visitors in 2019, with the number falling dramatically since the pandemic began. If the island's tourism bubble is a success, then other holiday destinations are expected to be open soon. Neighboring Thailand has reopened several islands, including Sept, to vaccinated foreign tourists. Malaysia imposed a nationwide lockdown in June as the highly contagious Delta variant sparked a surge in infections and has now logged more than 2 million cases and over 22,000 deaths. But authorities have started easing curbs in recent weeks as the outbreak slows and the vaccine rollout picks up speed, with over half the population now fully inoculated.
For the first time in history, an all-civilian mission has launched to orbit. The crew of 4 novices will spend 3 days orbiting the Earth in a SpaceX spacecraft without a professional astronaut on board. Take a look.
Get their umbilical ports plugged in. Yeah, the seats.
I do think being the commander of this mission is an immense responsibility, because if we are going to make space accessible to everyday people, we got to get the first mission right. If we don't execute incredibly well up there, that's going to slip the timeline to the right for everybody else who comes to follow.
There have been 3 Black female astronauts that made it to space, and knowing that I'm going to be the 4th. I am the mission pilot, and it's really special for me to hold that title because I'm going to be the first Black female pilot of a spacecraft.
And I've been processing right along with you guys through all of this, so I'm excited to take every one of you up with me.
It was just a regular day, and then my mom found a lump which turned out to be cancer. until now, astronauts have had to really be physically perfect, which is not a category that I fall into because of surgeries I've had on my leg. With my role in this, I really hope to inspire patients going through cancer treatment and other survivors that anything is possible. You know, I never thought I'd be going to space.
5, 3, 2, 1. Release, release, release. Nose gear, touchdown. And braking.
Questions and feedback will be used to enhance what we do.
And we, a couple questions.
We've been to space, everybody.
Here, catch.
Oh yeah.
I think we're all ready. You just have to wait for it. Who wants a Skittle?
On how it felt. Oh my God! My expectations were high and they were dramatically exceeded.
9A is the launch pad where NASA sent
nearly 2 million pounds of thrust.
I just want to point out, it looked like we had a team lean back there. You know, that's part of the journey as opposed to missions to the International Space Station where the NASA astronauts.
Finally, in our news, SpaceX all-civilian Inspiration 4 crew spent their first day in orbit conducting scientific research and talking to children at a pediatric cancer hospital after blasting off on their pioneering mission from Cape Canaveral the 19th. Now, St. Jude tweeted its patients got to speak with the 4 American space tourists, asking the questions we all want to know, like, are there cows on the moon? Billionaire Jared Isaacman, who chartered the flight, is trying to raise $200 million for the research facility. Inspiration 4 is the first orbital space flight with only private citizens aboard. Earlier, Elon Musk's company tweeted that the 4 were healthy and happy, had completed their first round of scientific research, and enjoyed a couple of meals.
That's really exciting. Just for 3 days, I wouldn't mind.
Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. It is the weekend.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we live
in interesting times.